Hello guys, good evening. Welcome to the first ever Boxing Gossip live event, live broadcast. Could be the first of many if this is a success. If you're watching, I know we've got Jack and Bruce joining me in the chat. Could you guys drop me a quick line? Let me know if you can see me. Let me know if you can hear me. That would be a good start, I guess, as these things go. Yes, excellent, excellent. I've got Jack saying he can hear me. Thanks very much, Jack. I will guys, good evening. Periodically, oh God, I got myself repeating on myself here. Could be the first of many if this is a success. Right. I know Jack and Bruce joining me in the chat. Could you guys give me a quick line? Let me know if you can see me. Let me know if you can hear me. That would be a good start, I guess, as these things go. Yes, excellent, excellent. Sorry, I'm just having a bit of a technical difficulty here. Bear with me for 2 minutes. I will, guys, good evening. Periodically, there we go. There we go. You guys still with me? Right. Sorry. Huge technical difficulties getting this up and running. You have to let me know along the way whether or not this is a success or not, because I'm not very good with my IT, I'm afraid. Yeah, it's taken me about 50 minutes to work out how we get this far, but I can see myself, I can hear myself, so if you guys can as well, that's a really good start. I wanted to talk about the weekend of boxing. Obviously, we've got some big fights coming up. Paul Smith versus Andre Ward. We've got Shawn Porter versus Adrian Broner. We've got David Lemieux versus N'Dam and Jikum. Before I get into it, one or two quick plugs. I guess the first thing to say is I filmed a video with a friend of mine. He runs a YouTube channel called Ultra Tech Sports. We did a 90-minute vid the other day discussing lots of major boxing issues. So if you like my stuff, please do check out his channel. He's very good, and there's that 90-minute video of myself. Filmed a video earlier on N'Dam versus David Lemieux, so if that's of interest, please check it out. So on this video, obviously I'm keen to discuss the weekend's boxing, but to be honest with you, I want to keep it fairly free. I'm going to keep looking into the chat. I'm happy to discuss any topics, any questions answered. So if there's anything you want to hear me discuss, however briefly, you know, do drop a line in the comments and I'll get to it. I'll try and read out the comments as I go along. I'm just looking at it now. I know we've got Jack, I know we've got Bruce, and I know we've got Delboy94 who's joined. Delboy94, I think was, I don't know if he even knows this, but Delboy94, I think, was the first ever subscriber to the Boxing Gossip channel. So thanks very much for joining, Delboy. You're pretty much the longest viewer that I've got. So much appreciated, and so to you, definitely. As we get into it, let's start with Paul Smith versus Andre Ward. To sum up this fight, I'm using the line, pray for Paul Smith. I think the horrible, brutal thing about this is the horrible, brutal thing about this fight is Andre Ward doesn't carry lethal power, and I guess as a result, it's likely to go rounds. You know, we've seen Paul Smith show some durability, so some defensiveness. You know, against it's not Andre, against Arthur Abraham. And I think it's going to be a pretty savage, brutal beatdown if this goes 12 rounds. And if, you know, if Paul Smith has to stay in there for 12 rounds, yeah, wouldn't surprise me if maybe, you know, there's a TKO, the ref has to step in. Maybe, you know, the corner has to throw the towel in or something like that. Because I know Ward isn't a knockout artist, but bloody hell, he's going to be hitting Paul Smith with everything he throws. And I just don't see Paul Smith having any ability to hurt Andre Ward. Ward's just so advanced on the inside and the outside. I also think the style difference is going to be like, the size difference, I mean, is going to be really, really key in this fight. the catch weight of 172. I've always thought of Paul Smith as quite a small super middleweight, whereas Andre Ward is obviously a big guy and is going to make the most of that moving up in weight. Whereas I'm not sort of playing to Paul Smith's hands. I'm just checking out the comments. Ruben, thanks for joining. Yeah, there's only 30 minutes of that video up, mate. I've left it with Ultratech Sports to kind of upload it. I think he's going to do it in 3 parts, so you can expect the other 2 to come up soon. I think it was just a case that the file was so long and file was so heavy that he thought it was better to, put it up in 3 different parts. But yeah, if you've seen the first part, let me know. Did you like it? Is that something that I should do more often? I mean, to be honest with you, I'm keen to do it just because I enjoy chatting to him, and we get on quite well anyway. So I'm happy to continue, but I'd be interested to know if that makes for entertaining viewing. Bloody hell! It says we've got 7 viewers joining me now, so fucking fly. But yeah, we got 7 viewers, so it seems like we're up and running. Let me know your thoughts on the Paul Smith Andre Ward fight, guys. I'm going to get into Broner-Porter in just a second, but when we're talking about it, let me know your thoughts on Paul Smith versus Andre Ward. Can you see it being anything but one-sided? Can you see Paul Smith having any success in this fight? Do you see it going rounds or being a stoppage? I mean, to be honest with you, a late stoppage, rounds 9, 10, 11, 12, or a or a sort of wide points decision, neither would surprise me. I could see Ward just having so much and being so accurate he forces the stoppage. The difficulty in my mind here is Paul Smith isn't the kind of fighter who carries power. Certainly not at this level anyway. So I just don't see any way that Paul Smith can win. Ward's so solid defensively and he's got a good chin. Surely it's borderline impossible that Paul Smith knocks him out. And with that in mind, is Paul Smith really going to knock out the Olympic gold medalist and the pound-for-pound #2 in the world? I just don't see it. I can't see any way that Paul Smith wins this fight other than some sort of freak incident where Andre Ward breaks his hand straight away, to be honest. So yeah, just looking at the comments, Ruben says he's referring to the video with Ultratech Sports. He's gone, yeah, it was good. Conversation cut off when it turned to Tyson Fury, which annoyed me because I didn't get to hear it. Right, okay. I'll message Ultratech and try and get that second part put up for you. Frags EU, I think BJS wins that, and Ward will school Smith, in my opinion. Are you referring to BJS versus Andy Lee? Jack says Ward is coming back and will want to make a statement. He's going to want to get Smith out of there. And Bruce says no, Smith has no chance. Stoppage win for Ward between 8 and 10. Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think there's an interesting point there raised about Andy Lee versus Billy Joe Saunders. I don't see this as a competitive fight. I know this is controversial, but I see this as a very one-sided fight. In my mind, Andy Lee is a guy who is relatively easy to outpoint. Look at the way Matt Korobov was outpointing him. Look at the way Peter Quillen was outpointing him. Look at the way, even John Jackson down at light middleweight was outpointing him. Andy Lee is technically not the best. He can be outpointed, and a really slick southpaw boxer like Billy Joe Saunders, for me, has the technique to, be 5 or 6 rounds up halfway through this fight. I think what Andy Lee has is that equalising power. He has that heart, that never say die, that determination. He's got a big set of balls, and because of that, you never count Andy Lee out of any fight. I mean, how he came back to draw that Peter Quillen fight was, amazing. But I think the difference here is Billy Joe Saunders is so tough, so defensively skilled. And look at the way, even though he was outgunned at the end of that Eubank fight, look at the way he stayed in there and the will to win he showed. I think he'll build up quite a big lead, but I don't think that he will fade like like Sir Quillen did. I'm just looking at these comments here. Ruben's saying Smith has got a 1% chance. I agree with that. It's a chance of a freak accident, isn't it, really? Jack says Lee gets hit by everything. He has a puncher's chance, even though he is the champ. BJS will just outbox him. Yeah, again, I can't deny that, really. Pretty much agree with that. Del Boy says, providing Saunders remains cautious and avoids the hook, he should win on points. Yeah, spot again. And Ross says that I'm always hating on Andy Lee. Smiley face, haha. Yeah, I mean, I like Andy Lee. I've always liked Andy Lee. I've followed him from the beginning. I really like his style. But for me, the fact remains, like, I hate to be critical of a guy, but he is so flawed technically. And if we're honest, and Ross, correct me if I'm wrong here, mate, but who has Andy Lee ever beaten? I mean, what is the performance that Andy Lee has put in that makes him a world-class fighter? I just don't see it. I don't see it. I mean, I know this is really being critical now, but it's arguable. And I don't have BoxRec open in front of me, but it's arguable that Billy Joe Saunders has actually beat better guys than Andy Lee, in my opinion. I mean, I know Andy Lee's been involved in the big fights, but in terms of getting wins against grade A opponents, I just don't really see it. I just don't really see it. Anyway, I've talked a bit about that. Guess the other one to go on to is Broner-Porter. I mean, that's a fascinating fight. It's a real 50-50. And it's a fight where my opinion has changed several times. And the closer I get to the fight, the more I kind of think this is really tight. I mean, Adrian Broner looks like he's in fantastic shape. He looks like he's been taking training very seriously. I've watched a few videos on Dante's Boxing Nation, where his sparring partners have been saying how clinical he's looking in sparring. And to me, the guy looks like he's turning up for a proper fight here. I mean, Adrian Broner, we can see the best Adrian Broner we've seen against Sean Porter. And I think Sean Porter is a guy who can be outboxed. He's not got the straightest punches. In my opinion, he's not the best technician. He lacks versatility, and he's quite sort of route one in his aggressive, come forward approach. I think Adrian Broner is the better boxer. I think Adrian Broner is the more accurate guy. I think Adrian Broner has more weapons in his arsenal. But for me, the difficulty is when you're dealing with someone as athletic, as aggressive, and as come forward as Sean Porter, you need to be able to move. You need to be strong in the clinch. And someone like Kell Brook, for a start, I think he's more mobile than Adrian Broner. Secondly, he's so much bigger than Adrian Broner that he is really, really strong in the clinch and you can hold an opponent and wrestle with them. I'm worried that Porter will be able to overwhelm Broner because Broner's a bit stationary and he's a smaller man. So yeah, I'm not. I haven't made my mind up on that, and neither winner would surprise me. But I'm just siding with Porter. I think his style, we've seen the Maidana fight. I think Porter's style, he could easily have enough to get the job done. He could easily have enough. Ruben's commented, off topic, do you ever have, sorry, bear with me for one moment. Do you ever have fights where you don't want either fighter to lose? This happens to me all the time, like Fury, Chisora, Eubank, Saunders. Let me answer that. Do you know what? I'm just going to grab myself a little drink because, talking and whittering away here is getting me all thirsty. So, Ruben, to answer that question, do I ever have fights where I don't want either guy to lose? There's actually two of them this weekend. And for me, that's N'Dam Lemieux and Broner-Porter. I think both of these guys are really, really solid operators in both fights. And I think all four of them are guys I'd like to see involved in the top fights out there. I personally would like to see Broner and Porter against the best at 140 and 147. I think both Lemieux and Hassan are both so different stylistically that I think they're a really interesting test for the likes of Miguel Cotto or Golovkin. You know, for me, when you get two fights like this, which aren't at the very top level of the sport, you know, they aren't for like the glamorous world titles against the pound-for-pound fighters, but they're involving four guys who are just below the elite level. I mean, that's when sometimes I do feel sorry for the loser. And I think Porter's going to beat Broner, as I just said. And I do feel a bit aggrieved for Broner, because I am a fan of Broner's style. And I just feel that this fight was not right for him stylistically. I mean, Porter's too big, he's too athletic, he's too mobile. Yeah, I just feel that Broner would have been best off staying at 140. And I think the guys at 140, like Matisse, Vodnikov, you know, those sort of guys, maybe even Danny Garcia, I know he's moving up, but those kind of guys can be outboxed by a guy like Adrian Broner. But I just feel that Porter is too big, too athletic, too aggressive. And it's kind of fight like that where I feel it may be detrimental to his career, and I would have managed him differently. So, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I do get that sometimes. So let me go up and look at some of the other comments that are coming through. Jack's put, I watched some of Dante's Boxing Nation, his versions of All Access. I don't really like AB at all. Porter's very aggressive and is going to want to make a statement after losing to Brook. Yeah, and that Brook fight, you know, I personally think that that was a very tight fight, you know, very tight fight. I scored that really, really close. And yeah, Kell Brook probably did deserve to win. I'm not trying to take it away from Kell, but, you know, Porter performed well. No, Adrian Broner, yeah, the guy behaves like an absolute dickhead. Like, you know, there's no two ways about that. The truth is, though, that he's actually a very, very good boxer. And some of the things he does in the ring are so advanced. I just really enjoy watching him for that reason, to be honest. Bruce Wayne's commented, Porter doesn't look healthy. These 3 pounds are too much for a guy who's already cutting so much weight. Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point, Bruce. I mean, I know he was fighting in the amateurs at, was it £168? And I heard that, I'm still not 100% sure this is true, but I've seen on numerous sites that he beat Alexander Usyk in the amateurs, who's a cruiserweight who went on to an Olympic heavyweight gold medal, and Porter beat him. So that shows you just how big Porter is. The truth is, though, and again, this is, I'm not going to make out that I've made up this sort of viewpoint, because I know a lot of boxing commentators and YouTube channels have made this point. But I wonder whether Adrian Broner actually walks around heavier than Sean Porter. Because Sean Porter's such a disciplined guy who stays in the gym and stays so fit. Whereas Adrian Broner, you know, he lives the life, he's a party guy. I wonder whether this is actually going to involve cutting more weight for AB than it is for Porter, even though Porter's undeniably the bigger man. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Del Boy, Porter loses the inside battle. He smothers his own work. That was very evident in Diaz Brooks and even the Bonet fight. I think Broner is underrated in the inside. I'm a closet Broner fan, by the way. Yeah, me too, Del Boy. I'm, yeah, as I say, a lot going for Broner. A lot going for Broner. I think he's been managed, and it's probably his own fault. I think stepping up from 135 to 147 was too much too soon. I think this fight is too much too soon. I think had he stayed at 140, had he fought Provodnikov, Matisse, Garcia, I think he'd be an unbeaten fighter and possibly in the top 5 pound for pound. I really do. You're right about the inside game. You're right about, well, the defence is there. The defence is certainly there. The jab is there. I think in his last fight, he showed such an increase in activity. You know, that's what I really liked. The only thing he doesn't have at the elite level right now for me is the movement. I also think he's a huge puncher at 147. I think he hits harder at the lower weight classes. Jack says, I'm like that with White AJ when that happens. They're both good for heavyweight boxing in the UK. I want them both to go on and win world titles. That's fair. He's talking about, you know, being upset for a guy when he loses. I guess that's fair, but what you've got to factor in, Jack, is the money involved, you know. I mean, Dillian White, I guess, will get 20 times his biggest ever purse, you know, for that fight. And if he, he's a guy, we know him because we're hardcore boxing fans, but the average man on the street doesn't know Dillian Whyte. So he's probably getting a life-changing payout, and he's getting a chance to become like a massive celebrity. The other thing you've got to factor in, mate, is if he loses this fight, he'll probably be viewed as a high-profile opponent. So somebody like David Price may bring him in for a fight. Someone like Derek Chisora may bring him in for a fight. It's potentially going to unlock the doors for him to get a big payday, even if he loses. So don't feel too sorry for him. But I take your point. Bruce Wayne, Broner just gains a whole lot of fat after fights. Porter has to lose more water weight. Fair. I just wonder if Broner's had to spend his whole camp losing fat, will he have had the time to make the technical adjustments and do the technical boxing training that's required? Jack says, I'm a huge fan of AJ, but I'll rate Dillian Whyte very highly and hope they do massive things with boxing. Tivertap, if I pronounced that correctly, says, have you seen the photo of Porter standing next to Wilder? He doesn't look so big there, but that shows just how big Wilder is. Yeah, Wilder's a bit of a unit, isn't he? Gioberry says, that sucks. I don't have a beer right now. To be honest, mate, it's quite a watery lager. So don't feel too jealous. Do you know what? I got out of work today. I went to Sainsbury's and I was going to pick myself up some really nice real ale, but unfortunately, I left my wallet in the office, so I had to pop back and then couldn't be bothered to go back to the shop. So I'm on the yellow water tonight, sadly. But yeah, can't complain. It's the weekend. Talking boxing, got a beer in my hand, so life could be worse. Ruben says, I can't stand those people say AJ beats Fury with ease. What are they smoking? To be honest, Ruben, in my opinion, that's just people who don't understand boxing. It's like, I don't understand Formula One. I mean, I could probably say Lewis Hamilton beats Jenson Button with ease and people would laugh at me. I don't get Formula One, and these people don't get boxing. They don't realise that the way Fury broke down Chisora is more impressive to people who know about boxing than the way Anthony Joshua destroyed Kevin Johnson. In a way, Eddie Hearn's done an amazing job on Joshua, because we're talking about a 12-fight novice or something like that who's never had a fight. And he's been talked about like the greatest fighter of all time. Jack says, very good point about White. Thank you, sir. Ruben says he's not got a beer, but he's got an ice cold Pepsi. Very nice. Gioberry says lager is perfect in this heat, mate. That's true. It's just out of the fridge, so can't complain. So yeah, in terms of my picks for the fights this weekend, I've edged towards Hassan N'Dam to beat Lemieux. Yeah, I see that as a real 50-50 matchup, and either guy could win. But I just think Hassan N'Dam put in such a good performance against Curtis Stevens, and a repeat of that could get the job done. I'm picking Broner over Porter in another fight that wouldn't surprise me if it goes either way. Put simply, I just think Porter's going to be too athletic and too big. And obviously I'm picking Andre Ward, late stoppage or points. Let me know your thoughts. What are your picks of the weekend? Who are you picking in those 3 fights? Are there any other big fights this weekend that I've missed? Delboy 94's on the Corona. Hope you got a slice of lime there, mate. Jack says, I think Fury would beat AJ right now. 12 months could be a completely different story. AJ needs to keep developing and then could fight next summer. In my eyes, Jack, there's a bit of a misconception there. I've heard a lot of people say what you've just said, so I'm not being critical, but I kind of disagree with what you've just come out with. Let me tell you why. Do you know that Tyson Fury is very similar age to Anthony Joshua? They're like 2 or 3 months apart, I think, in terms of age. I know Tyson looks a lot older because he's bald, but, Tyson is a very young man. I think the other thing is when you're Tyson's height, it takes you a lot longer to grow into your body. Now, I know Anthony Joshua is a big guy as well, but my point is, in terms of physical maturity, there's actually an argument to say Tyson Fury is less physically mature than Anthony Joshua. You've also got to factor in the advanced amateur career of Anthony Joshua. I mean, I know he came from, nowhere to being a gold medalist quite quickly, but Anthony Joshua achieved vastly more in the amateurs than Tyson Fury. So what you're looking at, in my eyes, is guys of very similar age, one of whom is an advanced amateur who won the highest prize in amateur boxing, one of whom had no success, well, limited success as an amateur. It's not fair to say he had no success. So in my eyes, it's kind of hard to say that, Joshua will be the one who matures. I think you could still make an argument that Fury is the one who will mature. I mean, look at the improvements Fury has made in the last 2 years. If you look at the Fury who was fighting Pike Hits and the Fury who was fighting even Steve Cunningham, and compare him to the disciplined master boxer who fought Chisora and Hamer, for me it's Fury who's on this massively upward curve. Fury who's maturing. Yeah, that's just my thoughts though. And I think there's more to come from Tyson Fury in that sense. Ruben has gone, would you ever start a boxing group like Hatman or Winnie Boxing on Facebook? Yeah, a few people have mentioned to me actually. It's something that I haven't really considered doing. But yeah, I mean, if people are interested in it, it's something I could go for, definitely. Ruben says, I don't think AJ beats Fury ever. Fury is going to get better as well. I just don't think we have seen Fury at half his best. And that's something I completely agree with. I rewatched the Christian Hamer fight last night. I don't know why I did it, but for some reason, I just got it in my mind that I was going to rewatch it. And, I went ahead and did that. And despite a perfect, dominant performance, you can tell the guy's just in first gear. He's kind of gliding across the ring, just throwing a jab, like, so relaxed. And you can see Keith Fury just saying to him, enjoy yourself out there, this guy's a journeyman. He could be a different beast in a fight where he's pressing. If you remember the fights where Tyson's actually been tested, it's the Cunningham fight and it's the Chisora 1 fight. And you see that when Fury's tested, he's got a different gear to go into. This is a guy who can actually fight. This is a guy who can actually brawl. This is a guy who's got guts, And I think there'll be more levels to come than what we've seen in the recent Chisora and Hamer fights when he steps up in class. Bruce Wayne has gone Ronces Bartholomew versus Antonio DeMarco on Sunday. Interesting bout at super lightweight. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend I have any sort of great thought process on that fight. I know this Bartholomew's supposedly a very big puncher and is some sort of ridiculously short price favourite. So I presume he'll get the job done. The other one is Errol Spence. He's facing a last minute opponent. I think his name is Le Greco. And yeah, interesting to keep tabs on him. He looks like a useful prospect. Apparently he's been dominating sparring against Floyd Mayweather and Adrian Broner. So anyone who's doing that, is certainly someone to keep note of, I guess. Jack says, and Jack's talking about what I just said about Fury and Joshua. Jack said, I don't think about it like that, to be honest. Would actually have to agree with you there. Maybe I'm just a little bit biased. I'm a fan of boxing though, and just want UK fights to be their very best. Yeah, I agree with you. And I always think I'd rather see a UK domestic clash than, him fighting someone international we've never heard of. I mean, frankly, I would rather see the likes of Joshua Sprott, Joshua Skelton, those sort of guys than Joshua versus some journeyman whose names I don't know. Yeah, for me it adds an element of intrigue. So I like the all British clashes. To be honest, this is why I wasn't so negative on Kell Brook Frankie Gavin, because I'd rather see Kell Brook Frankie Gavin than Kell Brook Berto. Let's be honest, neither of them have got the capability of beating Kell Brook. So why not get behind the British guys, and support it that way. That's just my thoughts. I noticed nobody's commented on Lemieux-N'Dam versus Lemieux. What are your thoughts on that one, guys? It always seems to me that Lemieux is the the overwhelming favourite with the bookmakers, but I'm rolling with Lemieux-N'Dam in this one. Yeah, it's a potentially interesting fight in my eyes. So, yeah, big weekend of boxing to come. Really like the fact that there's some genuine 50-50 action. You know, it's always good in boxing when you've got, you know, fights that are really hard to call, keeps you glued on the edge of your seat. And to be frank with you, Porter, Broner, Lemieux-N'Dam, I'm finding it really, really hard to pick winners. You know, Paul Smith, Andre Ward is a slightly more obvious resolution, I would guess. But nevertheless, good, fair play to Paul Smith. And it's interesting where Paul Smith goes from here, because if we presume that he loses this fight, it's hard to see what's really left for him in the sport. I mean, he could drop down a level massively and fight the likes of Rocky Fielding. He could get fed to like a Martin Murray. But, you know, realistically, assuming he loses to Andre Ward, then he's lost 3 fights at world level on the bounce. And whilst he's performed with credit in at least 2 of the 3 fights, he's nevertheless lost. And, you know, you've got to factor in that this is a guy who's also lost to George Groves and James DeGale, both times by knockout. So a consistent picture is emerging here of a guy who, you know, beats the Tony Dodgsons of this world, but doesn't perform at the very elite level. So with that in mind, we've got to ask ourselves, you know, what is left in this sport for Paul Smith to achieve? Who can he go to fight next? And in my eyes, the only fights out there for him really are the domestic classes, you know, Martin Murray at super middleweight, maybe John Ryder at some sort of catchweight, you know, Rocky Fielding. And the question is, does Paul Smith want that? He's obviously getting paid very well for this fight. He's obviously been paid very well in the last year for the Abraham fights. He's got his gigs with Sky. My guess is that this is the last time we'll see Paul Smith in a ring. That's my guess, because I just don't see any fights out for him after this one. I'll tell you what, I'll tell you another interesting fight that I'll touch on briefly, is George Groves, Badou Jack. That's an interesting fight. When it was initially mooted, I thought George Groves, you know, would win the fight with real ease. You know, I just can't forget Badou Jack getting absolutely smacked out by Derek Edwards. And we know George Groves can whack. I mean, look at the way he knocked out Paul Smith compared to Arthur Abraham. Look at the way he decked Carl Frost. I mean, for me, that image of Derek Edwards being sparked out is still in my mind, you know. How is he going to live with a guy who hits as hard as George Groves? But George Groves has looked so poor recently against Rebrasse and against Dennis Douglin, neither of whom are even semi-elite super middleweights. And Dennis Douglin isn't even a semi-elite light middleweight. And George Groves looks so poor at him. And to be fair to Badou Jack, he put in a career-best performance against George Groves. I mean, I think George Groves can get knocked out because he's a bit chinny and can be worn down because he doesn't have the best stamina. I don't see Badou Jack having the punching power to take Groves out. So the question in my eyes is, you know, whether Badou Jack can sort of maybe give up the early rounds and then try and sort of wear Groves down and, you know, try and get the job done that way and win the late rounds. And yeah, I've heard rumours that this is going to be on the Floyd Mayweather undercard, you know, when Floyd fights in September. So that would certainly be good for George Groves and his sort of exposure globally. Anyway, let me go back to the comments. Let's have a look. Giaberry says, have you discussed N'Dam Lemieux? That's the fight of the week, in my opinion. Yeah, I actually filmed a video on that earlier, mate, so check it out. But what I've said is, in a very 50-50 fight, I've gone for N'Dam just because of the basically the movement, and I think the blueprint he put out in the Curtis Stevens fight can you know, expose Lemieux. Although I do think Lemieux, you know, he's been put out to win here, hasn't he? It's kind of his time to get the job done, and it'd be interesting to see how he performs. It's the fight of the week, in my opinion. For me, the fight of the week is probably Broner-Porter. I'm very excited for that one, but yeah, they're both very, very good fight. Tivertap says, I also think Fury has come on a lot recently due to his uncle's training. He was showboating and chatting in round one against Cunningham, but was focused against Chisora. Yeah, I completely agree, mate. Peter Fury has done a fantastic job. And Peter Fury is someone who gets respect from, proper heavyweights and proper boxers like Eddie Chambers, for example. It's clearly not just a family thing. He clearly is a very, very capable trainer. So, yeah, fair play to Peter Fury on that front. And I think the fact he wasn't allowed to go out to the States due to sort of legal issues for that Cunningham fight was one of the reasons we saw, Fury decked and being slightly undisciplined in that fight. Giaberry comes back in. Have you seen N'Dam versus Curse DJ? No, I haven't. He struggled with a good presser fighter and got hit a lot. If Lemieux can cut the ring off and N'Dam is finished. Yeah, but I mean, isn't there similarities between Lemieux and Curtis Stevens? Yeah, am I the only one who thinks that? I think that, I don't know, I think possibly there are similarities there, and I think N'Dam has improved a lot recently. Del Boy 94 says N'Dam by late stoppage. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, I know N'Dam is viewed as like a sort of light puncher, but he's got 18 knockouts in his record. He dropped Curtis Stevens last time out, and let's be honest, what's his name? Lemieux got stopped by Marco Antonio Rubio. I mean, that's not the strongest suggestion of an excellent chin out there. So, I don't necessarily pick N'Dam by stoppage myself. I'm going more points, but wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if both men go down in this fight. But I think the good thing about N'Dam is we've seen him drop multiple times by Quillen. He's a big, big puncher at the weight, and he keeps getting up, he keeps carrying on, and he's got that determination. Jack says, Fury versus Klitschko is going to show us the real Fury and see what he's capable of. Yeah, I mean, that's a 50-50 fight in my eyes. I think we haven't seen Fury in the ring with a big man. We haven't seen Fury in the ring with someone with the power of Klitschko. Those are both two doubts in my mind. And they are, doubts that make it 50-50. But for me, the skill set of Fury is vastly more versatile and more complete than Vladimir Klitschko. And that's a big statement. I just think he's got so many strings to his bow. He's a real threat, and he can beat Klitschko. Ruben says, I recommend if you haven't, you watch Bayloric's interview with him. Really interesting, some golden quotes in there as well. Yes, mate, I've checked those videos all out from Bayloric. Yeah, very good stuff. Recommend everyone tuning in and watching those. Del Boy says, Hope Walker Smith, something I dislike about Paul. Very harsh, Del Boy. And Dam says, Giaberry says, and Dam doesn't stop people, mate. This is a common misconception. 31 wins, 18 knockouts. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's not a big puncher, but, Lemieux got stopped by Marco Antonio Rubio. It's not unbelievable that the same thing could happen again here. Bruce Wayne says, hopefully if he beats Klitschko, I'm going to party heavily. Yes, Bruce, I'll be joining you on that. Ruben says, I really want Groves to succeed, even though he can be a prick. Fair. Jack says, I hope Groves wins and that the Gale versus Groves rematch happens to unify. Yeah, I mean, that would be an amazing fight. And you could see Carl Frost being tempted out of retirement to face the winner after that. Could it be Frost Groves 3? Could it be Frost the Gale 1? Either way, that would be a great time for British boxing. Great build-up. And Eddie Hearn would be loving life. Jack says, I heard rumour also about the Mayweather undercard, and Bruce says, no, it won't. Groves Jack will take place in August. Bruce, why'd you say that? I mean, I've heard recently that it is going to be on the Mayweather undercard, so I'd be interested to know if you've got better information. If that's been reported somewhere, for example, do let me know. Going through the comments. Tivertap says it would be interesting to see how Callum Smith does against Brasse, to see if Groves has dwindled since the Wembley fight where he got knocked out by Carl Frotz in front of 80,000 people. Yeah, he got Cobra, didn't he? The thing is, right, I actually agree with Carl on that. Like, Groves did get Cobra because I've watched Groves coming up and he's always been a very, very good fighter. And his performances late have been completely subpar. I wonder if Frotz actually has ruined him. You know, it's not impossible in my eyes. Smith for Brasse, I've got a bet on that fight. I bet with one of the subscribers of this channel. It's only for a tenner, but I've got a tenner that the fight will last longer than 6 rounds. He thinks Smith will knock out Brasse in the first 6. I completely disagree. I think Smith has been slightly overrated and flattered by his form so far. And I don't think Smith is as good as Eddie Hearn thinks he is. I think he's a bit overrated. I think Brasse is a very tough, very big, very durable super middleweight who knows how to scrap and knows how to cover up when necessary. And I think whilst Smith is a very good body puncher, you don't stop people at the higher levels typically from body punching. And I doubt that Smith has the power to the head that he carries to the body. That's just my opinion. I think in all likelihood, this fight goes 12, and I think with Brasse, whilst I don't see him having enough to, you know, he doesn't have the power or the technique to have point Smith. I think we could, you know, leave the fight not being so sure that Smith is, you know, the next best thing, as people seem to think he is. Jack says, yeah, I rate Peter Fury very highly as a trainer, agreed. Giaberry says, Stevens is a defensive counterpuncher, Quillen's very passive. The fight you need to check out is N'Dam versus Kurt Cedars. It's also a great action fight. Thanks for that. I'll check that out. I haven't watched it. And yeah, that's a fair point. I guess Lemieux is a different type of fighter. I do see some similarities there between Lemieux and Curtis Stevens, but yeah, I'll check that fight out. Fair play. Ruben says, I don't care what anyone says. Frotz George goes free is awesome for me. Do you know what? I know people are going to hate me for saying this, but I completely agree. I'd pay pay-per-view for that, definitely I would. Funnily enough, I don't think that fight happens. I think the Gale beats Groves fairly handily if they fight again. The Gale's been looking so good, Groves has been looking so poor. And I really buy into this thing about the Gale having an injury. I mean, look how poor he was looking, and all of a sudden, this injury has healed up, and he's a world beater. So I think the Gale beats Groves. I actually think the Gale beat Groves last time round, and I bet on George Groves for that fight. But I think the Gale will win, and I think that will destroy the chance of Frotz goes through. But yeah, I'm with you. I'd certainly pay for that if it was on. Jack says, yeah, I can see Frotz coming back for the winner of the Gale Groves. Gale's matured a lot. I think he'll get the better of Groves, very skilled. Yes, mate, we're on the same page there. Giaberry, no, and N'Dam don't stop people at the high level. He can run away to a points decision a la Lara, but stoppage is out of the question. You're probably right, but does Marco Antonio Rubio, I mean, what about the Marco Antonio Rubio thing? I mean, for me, that's a big issue for the new fans, a real big issue. Del Boy, Callum Smith is horribly overrated in my opinion. He's as stiff as a board, no head movement at all. Totally agree. Robotic, upright, predictable. He's a good body puncher. But at the elite level, you don't tend to see the knockouts from body punching because the guys are so well conditioned. I mean, yeah, obviously there are examples, you know. Golovkin, Matthew Macklin is the one that springs to mind first. But my point is that at the elite level, being a good body puncher isn't enough. And I'm yet to see the power to the head of Callum Smith. I don't think Callum Smith has got the best movement. I don't think he's as smooth in terms of his combinations. I see him being quite stiff, quite upright, quite sort of 1-2 robotic. It's just my thoughts there. Bruce Wayne says several sites have reported that Groves will take place August 22nd in Vegas. Scheduled on BoxRec. Good stuff, mate. Yeah, didn't know that. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. Ruben says if George Groves knocked out Frotz in front of 80,000 people, What would his version of Cobra be? Grove. It doesn't have the same ring to it, does it? Sainted. Um, yeah, it doesn't have the same ring to it. I don't know about George Groves, you know. I think leaving Adam Booth was an error. And it's always been, you know, Groves looked spectacular in that first Fox-Groves fight, but I've always had a bit of doubt over him, you know. Like, I remember, and I watched this fight live, I remember when he fought Kenny Anderson. Kenny Anderson's a good fighter, but he's no world-level fighter. He dropped Groves badly. And then, as I say, I scored the Gale Groves fight to Gale. And that Fox-Groves 1 fight, I know it's controversial, right, but I don't really buy into the hype that this was a robbery. I mean, yes, the fight was stopped too soon. You know, I think most people would agree with that. But for me, the turn of the tide was. What am I saying? The turn of the tide in this fight was drastically changing. You know, Frost was coming on strongly. Groves looked very tired. He was starting to take punishment. And I think one of two things would have happened if this fight had continued. Number one, Frost would have genuinely knocked George Groves out, like he did in the second fight. Or the second option, which is that Frost would have won the remaining rounds. I mean, George Groves had been so dominant early on, and Frost was starting to win those rounds. So I don't necessarily see it as the worry. And you know, this is why I've got some doubts over Groves Badu Jack. I don't think Badu Jack is world level, but he showed some real game in that Andre Durrell fight. Sorry, the Anthony Durrell fight. So who knows? Gia Berry says he's not sold on Callum Smith yet either. Very mechanical, no imagination. He should overpower Abresse, but keep him well away from the likes of James DeGale. Yeah, I think you're right there, mate. I think you're right there. I just don't think that. I mean, I totally agree. It's just what we've been saying, isn't it? But it's interesting that a lot of the guys now who are commenting on my videos seem to agree there. He's just not quite smooth enough, is he? He's not smooth enough. And for me, this is something I see in Anthony Joshua as well. You know, very tall, upright guys who are a bit robotic and throw very sort of straight punches. I mean, for me, his punches kind of remind me of like a train going down a track. They're very, you know, like this. There's no sort of snap to them. There's no sort of angle to them as well. And I just see a guy like David Hay, you know, can move laterally, come in at all angles, you know, explode. I see him having a lot more success against a rigid fighter like Anthony Joshua. And to an extent, George Groves is the similar example for a Callum Smith. I could just see him having the explosiveness, the ambush, to kind of break up the defence of Callum Smith and ambush him and get the job done. That's just my thoughts. Anyway, we've been going here for about 48 minutes. It's time for me to get another drink in. Probably gonna call it a day for now. Do let me know the feedback on the first live event. Maybe it's something we can do a bit more regularly. Doesn't have to be to discuss specific fights, just a bit of a dialogue going back and forth. But let me know your thoughts. Did you like it? You know, if anyone's got any quick things they want me to discuss, message now. I'll keep it running for another minute and answer any more points or anything like that. But yeah, otherwise I think we'll call it a night. To everyone who's joined in, Jack, Giaberry, Ruben, Del Boy, to the top, all you guys, thanks very much for watching. Appreciate it. Keep tuned to the channel, and yeah, hope you enjoy the fights this weekend. All right, guys, I'm signing out. Speak to you all soon.